Nigeria's stock market rebounds as Europe sways amid renewed trade tensions. New minimum wage comes into effect this month as negotiations continue. Nigeria records 77% rise in pipeline vandalism. This is Business Express reaching you from Abuja, the nation's capital, and I'm Muplang Dakok. Let's begin on a cheery note. The new minimum wage will come into effect this month, even though negotiations are still ongoing. Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning Zainab Ahmed disclosed this while discussing government's agenda for the economy on NTA's flagship program, Good Morning Nigeria, earlier today.
On the minimum wage, the federal government is implementing the minimum wage from August. But that is just the minimum wage. We're in the process of negotiating with labor on the consequential adjustment that needs to be put in place for the rest of the service. So the workers that are on minimum wage on the federal government payroll, they're actually very few. They're very, very few because a lot of services that will have been in that category have already been outsourced. So when we finish that negotiation, the consequential adjustment will also be applied. The states is a different ballgame. Each state has to negotiate with its labor on how they will implement this. We will continue to encourage the state to at least implement the minimum wage first and then negotiate the consequential adjustment.
Vandalism of pipelines used to convey petroleum products increased by 77% in June. The Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation (NNPC) also said 1.76 billion liters of premium motor spirits (PMS), also known as petrol, was supplied in the same month. The corporation disclosed this in its monthly financial and operation report for the month of June, where it stated that the quantity of petrol supplied translated to 58.65 million liters per day effectively distributed. The report further explained that the Aba-Enugu axis accounted for 25% of the total pulverized points. The Lagos Atlas axis had 23% of the compromised pipeline points. The Ibadan-Ilorin leg accounted for 18% of affected lines, followed by the Port Harcourt-Aba section, which was responsible for 13% of the affected pipeline. In the wake of recent developments regarding online fraud, Business Express will today look at the multiplier effects on the trend and how Nigeria can better secure her cyberspace. Benny Adams presents a background report to usher in Business of the Day.
Over the years, the alarming growth of the internet and its wide acceptance has led to increase in security threats. In Nigeria today, several internet-assisted crimes known as cybercrimes are committed daily in various forms, such as fraudulent electronic mails, identity theft, hacking, and cyber harassment. Others are spamming, automated teller machine spoofing, and piracy, among others. Cybercrime has grown to be a threat against various institutions and people who are connected to the internet, either through their computers or mobile technologies. This disturbing trend is a source of concern as the impact of such crimes can be felt on the lives, economy, and international reputation of a nation. Just recently, the United States federal prosecutors have announced a 252-count indictment charging 80 people, mostly Nigerian nationals, being part of an alleged widespread conspiracy to steal millions of dollars through a variety of scams. This is coming in the wake of the arrest of Invictus Obi, who is a Forbes 30 under 30 entrepreneur over online fraud to the tune of $11 million. Nigerian Electronic Fraud Forum report estimates that financial damages from online banking fraud in 2015 to 2017 amounted to 5.571 billion naira, with mobile payments fraud rising to almost 350 million in 2017, and ATM fraud rising to roughly 500 million in the same year.
Abdul Hakim Ajijola is a cybersecurity expert and he joins us from our Kaduna studio. Thank you for joining us on Business Express.
For inviting me.
From evictors to the 80-man FBI list in the US, and then the battle the EFCC and the police are waging against home-based cyber criminals. Let's have your perspective on cybercrime.
First of all, to directly address your concerns about the indictments in the US, we must all please understand that an indictment is not a conviction. Indictment just means that the government in the US feels that they have enough evidence to take you to court, to prosecute you. Now, having said that, crime occurs everywhere, and I would like our viewers to please understand that these kind of indictments do not define us as a people, as a nation, and as a society. And I think it is very important that we look beyond the cyber issues that are involved, but to the broader issues of our mentality for shortcuts, the impunity that we display, many of us display, and also the notion of entitlement that many of us seem to harbor. And these notions of shortcuts, entitlements, and impunity cut across both the leadership and the followership.
So how does this affect the economy of a nation like Nigeria?
The truth of the matter is that all economies, whether they are digital or analog, whether they are Nigerian or American or Japanese, there is a fundamental thing called trust. And really, these kind of indictments undermine trust in us, trust in our society, trust in our institutions, trust in our business environment, and thereby undermines trust in our economy. So it actually is the key issue of trust that is undermined, that is particularly damaging. The victims are in the US, the money was laundered and distributed in the US. It is just that some of the perpetrators, probably not all, happen to be people of Nigerian origin, not even necessarily people who live currently or are permanently based in Nigeria. Many of them would claim to be now US citizens and based there. But having said that, we are based in Nigeria, and the global electronic domains, and again, I'm not privy to enough information, but most likely, for example, their email domains would have been the public ones that are global in nature, Gmail, Hotmail, and the like. So would they necessarily have been the Nigerian cyber domains? But having said that, we do have a stake in this because it is our trust and trust in us that is undermined. And it is therefore necessary for us to find ways to address not just the issues that directly led to these indictments, but also the underlying issues which cause young people of Nigerian extraction to engage in these kind of fraudulent activities. And as a society, not just as a nation, but as a society, parents, families need to look at this as well.
All right. So with the number of increasing use of technology, at what point should checks and balances come in, and who should do that?
Well, there are a number of issues here. First of all, we have to be careful because the issues are actually beyond the core of the technology. It's about us as people. But having said that, clearly there is a need for enhanced regulation. Clearly, this regulation, we have to be careful not to over-regulate, not to over-legislate, but we do need to be able to give our regulatory agencies, be they EFCC, be they NCC, be they NITDA, and so on and so forth, a little more bite, so that if you are suspected, if you are guilty of these things, there are ways that the system can go after the perpetrators of these criminal activities.
Okay, these crimes are usually regarded as cross-border crimes. So who is legally responsible for policing these crimes that are global in nature?
Okay, first of all, let us understand that technology in of itself is intrinsically agnostic and therefore does not recognize jurisdictions. But law enforcement is limited by jurisdiction. So there is this challenge. But having said that, who is responsible? First of all, each nation through its own judicial system is responsible for its own jurisdiction. So we as a country, Nigeria, does have some level of responsibility. And then we do have multi-jurisdictional organizations such as Interpol, the International Telecommunications Union, ITU. They certainly have, like the ITU has a regulatory function, and Interpol has a coordinating function for law enforcement. So at the international level, we need to look at these people. But we also must come and look at our regional level. In Africa, we have the AU, we have ECOWAS. There is a lot of work that people like myself have been doing on the Global Commission for the Stability of Cyberspace and the Global Forum for Cyber Expertise. And we've been trying to look at norms and principles for state and non-state actors' behavior. So once these norms and principles are set, then each society, each economy, each country will be responsible for their enforcement.
Okay, so do you think that Nigeria needs more legislation on cyber crimes?
I say yes with a caveat. And my caveat and concern is that I think sometimes in Nigeria, we tend to over-legislate. This is a very fast-moving environment, and legislation by nature and by necessity is slow. And therefore, I think it is important for our legislatures, the National Assembly and the executive, to be able to pass legislation that empowers further the regulators to be able to adjust and accommodate as these issues arise and change. The truth of the matter is that there are crimes today that didn't exist 10 years ago, and because of technology. And legislation is not something that can be changed per second. But regulation and a strong regulator, I believe, is the way forward. Again, we have to be very careful that in our legislation and regulation, we don't impinge on people's rights, right to privacy, right to pursue their own form of happiness. But again, where one person's right ends is where the next person's right begins. And I believe the legislation that is required is more to be able to give the regulators, the enforcement, EFCC, police, NCC, NIDA, more bite to be able to do their job. And of course, those same regulators and institutions need greater capacity in terms of the capacity of their people to discern, to think, and to enforce.
Thank you very much. Let's take one last question. How much investment do you think Nigeria should undertake in cybersecurity, and do you think that the country is investing enough in cybersecurity?
Definitely, not only is the country not investing enough, it does not have enough to invest. With all due respect, the USA, that is the largest economy in the world, cannot solve this problem alone. And therefore, how would Nigeria be able to solve it alone? What we need to do as a society and as a nation, and our leadership needs to do, is to build ecosystems, to build bridges, to build collaboration, to develop cooperation. Also, as a society, I think that we need to shun fraudsters, not glorify them. We need to, as individuals, if we see something, we need to say something. We need to ensure as individuals that these institutions do something. So there is a collective responsibility and there's an individual responsibility. But when it comes to financial resources, nobody has enough.
All right. Thank you very much, cybersecurity expert Abdul Hakim Ajijola, for joining us from Kaduna. The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, has announced that considerable progress has been made in the implementation of its consolidation of multiple shareholder accounts and electronic dividend mandate management system, EDMMS, as so far about 3.4 billion shares have been consolidated. Both measures were introduced as part of the checks on the growth and possibly eliminating the unclaimed dividend menace in the nation's capital markets. The announcement was made by Acting Director General of the SEC, Mary Uduk, who told reporters that a total of 2.7 million shares accounts have so far been captured under the EDMMS. She said with the help of the multiple subscription committees, 3.4 billion shares have so far been effectively consolidated. The meeting rose with a resolve that the SEC should engage relevant stakeholders on the e-dividend and multiple subscription accounts so as to ensure that complete investor data are transferred among operators such as brokers, registrars, and the Central Securities Clearing System, CSCS. The acting DG noted that the issue of unclaimed dividends is dynamic, given that as the old heap is being cleared by the registrars, new ones are mounting by the day. And stocks last week reacted positively to ministerial portfolios. On the week, investors gained more than 403 billion naira as the NSE All-Share Index advanced by 3.25%. Bosede Able has an outlook of performance of the week ended Friday, 16th August 2019.
In the week under review, the NSE All-Share Index and market capitalization appreciated by 3.07% and 3.25% to close at 27,800.17 and 13.5 trillion naira. All other indices finished higher with the exception of NSE Insurance Index, which depreciated by 1.38%, while the NSE ASM closed flat. A total turnover of 2.3 billion shares worth 19.7 billion naira in 18,379 deals were traded by investors on the floor of the exchange. The financial services industry led the activity chart with 1.8 billion shares valued at 10.4 billion naira traded in 10,701 deals. It was followed by the conglomerates industry with 197.8 million shares worth 286.2 million naira in 1,066 deals, while the third place was occupied by the industrial goods industry with a turnover of 100.3 million shares worth 2.1 billion naira in 788 deals. Sovereign Trust Insurance PLC, Transnational Corporation of Nigeria PLC, and Zenith Bank PLC jointly accounted for 1.2 billion shares worth 3.3 billion naira in 2,907 deals to emerge the top three equities. A total of 3,943 units of exchange-traded products valued at 1.6 million naira were traded in 7 deals, with 1,673 units of federal government bonds valued at 1.6 million naira also traded in 31 deals. 40 equities appreciated in price during the week, 25 equities depreciated in price, while 101 equities remained unchanged.
Global stocks show sign of pickup on global stimulus talk and trade optimism. Bosede Able has a roundup of activities across the markets again.
The global market last week saw market fluctuate as investors anxiously waited for the speech of the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell on Friday, where he said the U.S. Central Bank will act as appropriate to sustain the current economic expansion, which is the longest in the history of that nation. However, it wasn't clearly stated if another rate cut was imminent in September. Markets were sent tumbling last Friday after President Trump ordered U.S. firms to start looking for an alternative to China, with the Dow Jones Industry Average losing 623.34 points. Those declines wiped out the weekly gains the average had built through Thursday's close and after Friday's session. The Dow ended down 1% for the week. The S&P 500 slipped by 1.4% and Nasdaq Composite also lost 1.8%. 5%. Futures had indicated declines after the weekend saw an escalation of the trade war. President Trump tweeted Friday after the market closed that the U.S. will raise tariff on $250 billion worth of Chinese goods to 30% from 25%. Tariffs on another $300 billion in Chinese goods will also go up to 15% from 10%. The levies on the $250 billion worth of goods are scheduled to kick in October 1, while the duties on the $300 billion are set to go into effect in 2 stages on September 1 and December 15. Major Asian indices fell more than 2% on Friday. Beijing unveiled new tariffs last Friday on $75 billion of U.S. goods. Amid the market turmoil, the offshore Chinese yuan fell to a record low against the dollar. China and the U.S. have been engaged in a trade war since last year. The economic conflict has dampened economic and corporate earnings growth expectations as investors and companies weighed its impact on the global economy.
Thank you, Bose. Provision of storage facilities and prioritizing product processing are said to remain a viable option for enhancing the production of onions in the country. These were some of the suggestions of onion farmers in Sokoto. Musa Abubakar reports.
At first sight, you wonder why this thatch is kept in this farm. Ali Mustafa, an onion farmer, explains that it is the traditional way of storing and preserving onions.
I bring onion, 2 bags or 3 bags, so that I keep it, then I will cover it with the grass. So if he take 40 days or 50 days, then I will carry it to keep another place.
Sokoto State is said to be one of the major producers of onions in the country, with over 1.5 million metric tons produced every year. But the quantity should have been more, if not for poor storage facilities, which often lead to post-harvest losses.
If we keep 10 bags, maybe we lose 2 bags or 3 bags. People, they farm onions plenty. But how to storage that onions, that be problem number 1.
Another source of concern is the absence of value addition, which will have reduced losses.
How we will take these onions to other country? Because now people, they are coming from Ghana, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire. They are coming. Make government come into this our business, because this our business is not a small business.
With government poised to generate more revenue, a deliberate investment towards value addition is believed will pave the way towards diversification of the economy.
Let's now see how commodities are faring in the local and global markets. And how is the Naira performing against major currencies? Find out. Well, that's the end of this edition of Business Express. Join us again on Wednesday.